This webinar will be recorded and a video will be posted later on our YouTube channel. I am delighted to welcome my dear friend Hala El-Badry. Hala is an acclaimed Egyptian novelist, short story writer, critic, and journalist. She has excelled in every field she attempted, including sports, where she was a national swimming champion for many years. We are all looking forward to hear from Hala, but before we do, I will quickly give a brief history of Arab World Books for newcomers joining us today. My name is Amani Amin. 23 years ago in March 1998, I thought the internet would be a great opportunity to pay tribute to the writers who have enriched my life. I created Arab World Books, which is dedicated to highlight the ideas, the books, and the women and men who create them. The core of this website has always been the author bios, their books, as well as their writing. The website is dedicated to provide an understanding between different cultures, and we are most proud that over the years it has become a destination for researchers and centers of Arab studies around the globe. Around the year 2001, we introduced two programs, the Writers' Workshop and the Book Club, both running now for 20 years. In the Book Club, we have featured a mixture of fiction and non-fiction, mainly recent books. Reviews and comments were conducted online. And lately, as book clubs have become more prevalent in the Arab world, we have focused on international literary masterpieces like the works of Albert Camus, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Günter Grass, such books that have the potential to broaden one's horizon. We also introduced a series of conversations with Arab and international writers. Tonight is our fourth episode of this series, which is titled A Writer, a Vision, a Journey. These in-depth conversations aim to explore the motivation process and outcomes of a writer's journey, and hopefully shed some light on the values and experiences that are common to writers and readers across the world. Today is double special for me. We are celebrating Arab World Books' birthday. We are 23 years old, and it is a pleasure that our guest tonight, Hala El-Badry, is one of the first authors who joined us so many years ago. Egyptian author, novelist Mohammed Tawfiq will host and moderate the discussion. Thank you all for participating, and I really wish you a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amani. For those who join us for the first time, let me give you briefly how the format works. The meeting, we try to wrap up this meeting in about 90 minutes. I will start by giving a little bit more information about our guest, Hala, and then we will have a conversation between me and Hala for about 40 minutes, and then we will open up the discussion to the participants. Hala El-Badry, of course, as Amani has mentioned, is an acclaimed Egyptian novelist. She's a very good friend. She's also a president of the Egyptian branch of PEN International. She has received the State Excellence Award in Literature in 2012 and was awarded Best Novelist at the Cairo International Book Fair in 2001 for her novel A Certain Woman, and again in 2018 for her novel Walled Cities. She holds a diploma in journalism and has a Bachelor of Arts in Commerce. She was a chairperson of the board of directors and editor-in-chief of the Egyptian Radio and Television magazine. From 1975 to 1980, she was the Baghdad correspondent for the Egyptian Rose Al Yusuf magazine. Hala's articles and stories have appeared in numerous literary journals. She has authored both fiction and nonfiction books. Her work was the subject of numerous reviews and academic studies. Her work has been translated into English, French, Spanish, Serbian, Greek, Azerbaijani, and Russian. She has given talks on her work in international universities, including University of Chicago, Wayne State University, Michigan University, Cairo University, Ain Shams University, and University of Algeria. My good friend Hala is also known for encouraging and supporting emerging writers, which I think is something that I appreciate very much in any author. Uh, Thank you, Hala, for taking the time to be with us tonight. And let me start right away by asking you the question that I ask to every author in the series. What motivates you to write? At what point in your life did you start seeing yourself as a writer?
Good evening, everyone. I am happy to be a guest in the respected Arab World Books. I'd like to thank Dr. Amani for her continuous effort to serve writers and readers as well. I'd like to also thank my friend Muhammad Tawfiq for preparing and participating in this dialogue. I am so delighted to meet the participants in this seminar. Hopefully it will be a happy and fruitful evening for everyone. For your question, I started writing poetry and thoughts at the age of 12. From the very beginning, I saw myself as a writer, not even as a realizable dream, but as an absolute reality. And I believe in my potential. Variety of factors motivates me. A sentence spoken by accident evokes a scene or a character. An abstract image transformed to character in my mind. Passerby, a scene in the movies set of Fallout, a piece of music bring back memories, accident in the news, a smile, a situation that shocks me, reflect on the conditions of humanity, human weakness, love energy, dreams, and so on. Your voice.
That's a fantastic beginning. Thank you, Hala, because you've touched on a number of issues that I think we can uh, explore further. Uh, Now, how I'm curious about this. How did your career as a journalist, as an editor in chief, influence your writing? Uh, how did it influence the factual content of your work and your use of language, for example?
Journalism is a double-edged sword. It does open the entire world of possibilities. In Egypt and worldwide, it gave me a greater mobility towards deep understanding of society and people that no other job could provide. In fact, most of the Arab writers cannot depend on writing as their only source of income. The press enhanced my ability to investigate and research on the ground. This is why I entered the novel, which depends on information with the power of possessing its tools. I wrote my articles with literary enters and border fiction, even in politics. There is a major obstacle. It consumes a huge amount of time, yet it has its own charm. I love it. I lived my life as trapeze player. Balance is everything, or like a married man with a mistress. A mistress. How did that have influenced my writing language? Working as a journalist have polished my language to satisfy magazine readers, short and direct rhythm, to deliver large amount of information. It is unlike the language of lyrics or literature. Sometimes I like to use direct and straightforward language.
Thank you. I want to follow up on this image of the person on the trapeze, or the married man with the mistress. Uh, there's obviously great diversity in your work. You can see that very clearly, but you can also, on the other hand, detect some autobiographical elements.
Yes.
And that takes me to the question: where does your writing come from? How do you channel the creative process? Do you, for example, practice self-censorship?
It's a lot of questions. For the first point, I wrote many novels and short stories, and I don't like to write on the same topic twice. For autobiographical elements, in 2002, I wrote an autobiographical novel about death when my husband passed away suddenly, titled Folding the Pain Away, which I didn't publish yet. And I used one paragraph of it in my novel, Women in My House. I also wrote a short biography entitled Orbits of Innocence, would be published next month, inshallah, in which I clearly combined my childhood with self-writing and the childhood of others. A writing that I think is unprecedented and will be a surprise. I gave my journalistic experience, not my life, to one of the heroes of my novel, Rain on Baghdad. When I started to write this particular novel, a major question was jumped into my mind. Why should not I write an autobiography about my experience in Iraq instead of writing a novel? And I found that this kills art and prevents freedom of imagination. For example, exposing virginity seen at the perilogue of the novel did not really happen to me, but it happened to my imaginative character. Most of my other works are epic, often in the voice of a man, sometimes is in a crazy abstract idea, and sometimes a tyrannical fantasy. As for self-writing, this is another topic. The main difference between the autobiographical literature that restrained free imagination and the self-writing is that self-writing is allowed the mixture of the two forms of autobiography and self-fiction, which means getting out of the dilemma of the direct real life storytelling, and the use of mixture of imagination and real life actions to build harmonic and balanced novel. Concerning to autobiography elements on my novels, I can get you examples. In my novel, Walled Cities, I wrote about the future thousands of years ahead of us. Where is the self here? The self is the writer's vision of the future world. B, in my novel, Not Now, I wrote about an officer participating in October's war. Where am I in the novel? It is my vision. C, in my novel, Muntaha, actions are set in the countryside between the First World War and March 1954, crisis between Gamal Abdel Nasser and the other political parties before I was born. In my novel, Women in My House, I present myself as the fourth protagonist. As you see, the freedom of writer cannot be restricted in autobiographical form or time or a certain place. Otherwise, art and imagination would be demolished. I said before that I am playing.
Thank you. I think
Another, you ask about the self-censorship. The self-censorship exhausted me at the beginning of my career, and I had a battle with it. Sometimes I imagined that I defeated it, but I still find it bouncing on my desk from time to time. Then, with my growing experience, I became bolder and I can control it. To much greater degree, women have more social fears than men do, but we all have religious and political fears. That is why the writer in The Hard Days uses symbolism. Talking about where my writing comes from, I think it comes from contemplating the universe, self-meditation, general philosophy, from the idea of existence, from seeking idealism and the truth, and finally from feeling oneness with the universe. The foundation of my literature in general is based on playing games where each individual game has its own rules. I just enjoy playing literature games and creating its own rules.
you have opened up so many different avenues to explore. Let me start with setting. You mentioned Iraq. You started by talking about Iraq.
Yes.
Now, how did living in Iraq for many years influence your writing? Were you tempted to compare between the two cultures? Did your Iraqi experience help you to better understand Egypt? Did it help you to better understand yourself? Can you tell us a little bit about your Iraqi experience?
Okay. The novel is not an emotional splash like poetry and short story. This is why I spent years writing my novels and preparing for them. Some of them, like my novel Muntaha, which took 14 years to be done. My novel Rain on Baghdad took 8 years to be done. My novel A Certain Woman took 5 years to be done. And finally, the novel Walled Cities took 9 years to be done, and all of them. Living in Iraq for many years had enabled me to study the entire region, its civilizations, and its connection with the ancient Egyptian civilization, as well as the modern Iraqi society that has appeared in my books. For example, the Iraqi woman and Egypt's peasant in the land of Iraq, and the stories from Al-Khalsa and many other short stories and narration. This had helped me to understand the disconnected communicator elements between the two civilizations, the ancient and the modern one, especially as I was influenced by the Tuhut principle that placed in the emerald tablets. That is why I wanted to compare the ancient Iraqi myths and beliefs such as Ashtar, Inanna, Gilgamesh, and others.
Thank you. I want to go back to your original comments about women and the situation of women.
Yes.
And of course, anyone who's read your works will see that there's a special focus on women, their situation, the unfavorable situation of women in the Arab world, but also women around the world.
Yes.
Since it's so evident that you have these women protagonists, these women in different situations and from different parts of the world, why is it that every time you are asked a question about women and the role of women, you insist that you're not a feminist?
Yes. I totally agree with you. The explanation is simple because I am not biased towards women against the rest of the society. I write about what have been silent about it in society to liberate humanity from the injustice that affects it through racism, appropriation, wars, monopoly, and the other causes that degrade people. This is why I do not find anything that prevents me from referring to the injustice inflicted on women if the work focus on. I often present the hard-working woman enjoying life in my novels. That is giving an impetus to fertility in all around her, such as Isis, and how these women overcome their problems by going through it to reach their goal. This is why my novels are a true love, chants, or songs for life, as well as my character, Wadida, presented in my novel Muntaha. I believe that men and women together are under tremendous pressures, and together they are facing oppression because of politics, religion, and the greed of capitalist countries. There is an injustice and greater pressure on women, poor and real talents in science and in arts. It is natural for my works to reflect my vision of the world. Although I defend women writers in every scene in my novel, Women in My House, I do not consider myself the feminist. I have my own reason. Another point, the deterioration of the status of women in Egyptian society at the end of the last century with the rise of the Salafi trend. We saw the call for the returning of the women back to their house, preventing women from continuing education as long as she does not need to work and make money. They have attempts to withdraw what rights women had gained, imposing the veil even on female children, using new religious concepts on society to impose radical changes that degrade women's status. such as encouraging polygamy, woman circumcision, forcing a sister or daughter to marry one of the brother in the brotherhood, and other aspects that society never faced before in such large scale. In the 25th January Revolution, women played a major role in protesting against injustice, changing the political system, and defending our identity when the Muslim Brotherhood began to push for the obliteration of identity, especially in terms of women's freedom. We were waiting for conditions to change after their removal. However, candidacy of women to run to election for higher positions was not achieved. These are facts that a writer cannot ignore in his novels. As for literature, critics classify women's writing as a feminism action. Critics would like to draw women picture in their articles as weak victim who is crying for a man to help them. And this is unacceptable. Dozens of female writers have written about equal right between men and women in the society. Great numbers of highly achieved women has been neglected from being selected for state prize and honorary award. This is a phenomena among male critics worldwide.
Thank you for that. I agree, of course, that that women's rights are not issues that are relevant only for women. They're relevant for societies as a whole. But let me move to a question relating to the technique of writing. You mentioned the novels "Women in My House" and "Old Cities." I have noticed that these novels, your latest, they're increasingly experimental in nature.
Yes.
Can we conclude that there's an evolution in your writing style, or was this simply something that was dictated by the subject matter of these novels?
Evolution is natural in any writer's styles. I tend to experiment from the beginning. In my second story set, Horse Wings show this, but I have noticed that certain types of experimentation take longer time to be accepted. This is why I used magical realism in my novels Muntaha and Not Now. There is different themes and mythological characteristic embedded in our heritage. So it is very normal to jump into my writing, and within the field experiment, it is very rich culture. I have deep experience dealing with such matters that develop my courage, and I earn credibility with my readers that allows me to experiment in any direction I want to.
Uh, Let me go a little bit more into detail, such as talking about Women in My House, which is a fascinating work. Now, this novel expresses a clearly multicultural outlook.
Yes.
It places Austrian poet Ingeborg Bachmann, American painter Georgia O'Keeffe, pioneering Egyptian novelist Ut al-Ulub Demerdasheya, in your home, in the home of Hala El-Badry.
Yes.
Now, what are the commonalities between all these women who lived at different times in different places, and you and yourself? And what are the cultural and personal differences?
I invited Mahman, Qut al-Qulub, and Ukev to my house to take advice, discusses our lives, and work with them. Our characters, Ash, Nahid, and Ramza, to judge the writers and revise. And I also invited their husbands and lovers, Max Fresh, Paul Celan, Alfred Stieglitz, Mahmoud Abu al-Fath, Ahmed al-Badri. Now comes the question, what do I have in common with them throughout the novel? I wondered, the universal reader at the end of the novel can find the answer for this exact elimination despite our different cultural, social, and political environments, the different times and the age of each of us. Because Qut al-Qulub and Ukev was born at the end of the 19th century. Bachman was born in the first quarter of the 20th century, and I was born in the second half of the same century. It seems like I was moving chronologically to wave the links between the different fragments of the novel incidents. Another element of the characters' the defragmentation is their experience as a professional in their different work fields. We are highly achieved writers who reach their goal despite difficulties they faced. Another link between the characters, their passion for life, in addition, their clear attitudes towards society and try to develop it. As intellectuals, we represent an influential class who can understand each other and share their experiences. This makes the natural differences in the private life of each of us insignificant. Perhaps because each of us suffered in her life from the attempts to limit her expectation to a lower degrees. As an example, what they had tried to do with O'Keeffe's The Female. She didn't even acquire the title of a pioneer of modernity in American society, until she was in her 80s. Another example, trying to eliminate Qut al-Qulub from the history of Arab literature, because she was writing directly in French, was not the real reason for this elimination. There was a political reason behind that. I prove that in my novel. My characters, including myself, have an existential anxiety in addition to the lack of verification in love, whether through betrayal or death, as it happened to me and led directly to loneliness. In the novel, there are dozens of reasons the reader realizes simply because there is many similarities among them.
Well, this theme of global view or internationalist understanding of the world is seen in another way in walled cities,
Yes.
which really deals with the trend that we see in many countries in the world today, in which elites choose to live in walled communities rather than deal with the issues of social injustice. Did you intend to make a political statement with that novel?
I have never had any problem publishing my own vision of the political scenes. As you know, direct opinion does not support art, and writing novel is totally different issue. I think that I am the first Arab writer who developed a novel that revolves in the distant future. It depicts what a person would morph into a new being through altering genetics, what he will carry with him from our world, and what he will leave. The world of the wealthy people in the novel was not the target. As an evidence, I wrote about dictatorship of the primitives who always break about their purity, not on the face of epistemologists, but also in the face of the El-Bazramid. El-Bazramid are people who failed to transform and are no longer pure and, of course, poor.
This is this term. I mean, Bazrami. This term of dealing with different issues. Of course, had a term in apartheid South Africa. They called it bastardization. And so this issue of racial or group purity. So we can see clearly from what you've been telling us that your writing raises feminist issues and class issues. It discusses modernity and traditional values. It mixes memories with politics and history. And of course, we know that you're the head of the Egyptian branch of PEN International. So, what are your inhibitions as a writer? Do you try to abide by them, or do you feel a need to challenge yourself and society in general?
I used all the possible tools in my hand, and I had invented some other. I believe that novels in general is a literary genre that has not yet taken shape, so I can shape it as I wish. And this is the good fortune of the writers now. Of course, I encountered many taboos in habitation, but I resist them strongly and try to communicate my message in every way. In my opinion, the writer can be cunning, who like to play and develop symbols and appropriate escape. But the situation now has more cavities that make publishing houses afraid to publish more frank books. My position is simple, similar to that of the hero at the end of my novel, A Certain Woman, Omar, who adapted my opinion when he decided to write whatever he wants and thoughts and published it wherever it has been accepted to be published.
Thank you for that. I'll ask one more question before we move on to the participants' remarks and questions. I'll take your lead from your mention of the writer's map.
Yeah.
The writer's map brings into mind your extensive interaction with writers and writing from all over the world. How do you place Egyptian writing in the map of world writing, and how do you place Hala El-Badry in the map of Egyptian writing?
Arabic literature, including Egyptian literature, competes well with the world literature. The main problem that faces the spread of our literature is the translation from a language that doesn't have a Latin roots. There are some help, of course, طبعا, to translate more work from the state. Some businessmen, and some with large projects such as the American University project in Cairo, which allocated part of the profits from the sale of Naguib Mahfouz's books to the dissemination of Arabic literature. Unfortunately, however, the book needs to be distributed at minimum of 60,000 copies in order to reach people, not to a few thousands copies as the university prints. Printed novels still remain confined to academic scholars and not in the public domain. I place myself on the map of Egyptian literature as part of the 17th generation, and I consider myself a postmodern writer who aspire to constantly experiment. After Mahfouz and the age of pioneers came Edward al-Kharrat and Latif al-Zayyat and the generation of the 60s, like Yahya al-Tahir Abdallah, Baha Tahir, Sun'Allah Ibrahim, Jamal al-Ghitani, Khairi Shalabi, Muhammad al-Busati, Saeed al-Kafrawi, and many others. Then the 17th generation, wherever you can find influential writers like Ibrahim Abdel Majid, Muhammad Mustajab, Salwa Bakr, Abdou Kbir, Muhammad al-Mansi Andil, Fawziya As'ad, Khairi Abdel Jawad. Then came the generation of the 80s and the 90s, where you can find Hala El-Aswani, Muntasir al-Affash, Muhammad Tawfiq, Ghada al-Halawani, Miral al-Tahawi, Mayt al-Misani, Ahmed Abu Khnegar, and Adil Ismat, followed by the Tariq Imam, Adil Saad, Ahmed Abdel Latif, Subhi Musa, Ashraf Ashmawi, Hamdi Gazzar, Khalid Ismail, Rasha Fathi, Reem Basyouni, and many others. Each one of them has contributed to the development of modern Egyptian novel movement.
Thank you very much. I think the participants really are very interested in comments, and I already see some hands are raised. Frankie, would you like to start?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mohamed. And let me also thank my friend, colleague Hala for this brilliant discussion. It's a shame, Hala, I must admit, I haven't had the opportunity of reading any of your books. So perhaps maybe the question I'm going to ask might have been addressed. If I have read the books, I wouldn't have asked this question, but I haven't. I will try and see if I can have copies to read. But as a journalist and as a writer, for those of us who have practiced journalism in Africa, we have at one time or the other faced difficulties and problems with state institutions, governments, and even groups.
Yeah.
Have you had such problems as a Egyptian journalist and writer, or you've stayed away from controversy by following government directions?
I never stay away. I never. How can I? But they never prevent my books to issue. Yani, never. but they made many. I have faced many problems as a journalist
Okay.
in my magazine. I never took my real place. I never been at the end of my career after the revolution, the 25th January revolution. I became a chief of the magazine only. But before the revolution, they never give me any chance to be.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about my language.
No, I understand. I understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, it's very clear. You've made yourself very clear.
Yes.
Okay, now we have Bashair and then Hartmut. Bashair, do you want to make a comment or ask a question?
Yeah, hello. It's my pleasure to come and to listen to you. So I have a question. Well, when we read for a writer, do you think that we can identify the identity for the writer, even though if we don't know the name? I mean, through the novel or the story, so we can guess if this writer is a man or woman. So that's my question.
Okay, you will not find any similarities if you read two different novels of me. You will never know if the writer is a man or a woman. I don't find any difference between writing a woman and a man. I think that a woman did not provide for writing anything new at the level of language of structure. As for her attention to details, Hemingway wrote more details than any woman writer did. Regarding the difference in the world view, I believe that a professional writer needs to study his topic well, because he will write the point of view that express the imagined personality and not himself. His work will broadly express his vision.
Thank you very much. That's a very interesting topic. I'm sure we can go on discussing this topic forever. Hartmut?
Hannah, I have two questions. One is a very short one. You said the novel has not taken shape yet.
Yes.
Do you think it ever will?
Ever will?
I think it's an open genre. It's a completely open genre.
It's
and
what?
They have predicted the death of the novel 100 times or many hundred times, and the novel still lives on.
My internet connection is unstable.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Can you repeat your question,
I'll
please?
try it again. You said that the novel has not taken shape yet.
Yes, yes.
And I was wondering whether you think that the novel will ever take shape, because the death of the novel has been predicted 100 or many hundred times, and the novel still lives happily.
Can you read it? Because I can't hear you.
Oh, that's very bad. Yeah.
And
okay.
I'm sorry.
Let me try and repeat. Maybe
the connection is better.
Yes, maybe the connection is better
from Switzerland.
I think what the question is that you had mentioned that the novel is still an evolving art form.
Yes.
And he is wondering whether you think that the novel will ever reach a point of maturity where it is fixed, because his point of view is that the novel by definition is ever changing. It never reaches a state of maturity, a state of stability, and that he has mentioned that in many cases, the novel has been, there have been predictions for the death of the novel, but that never happens. The novel continues to thrive.
Yes, yes, it's alive.
Yeah,
It's a live creature. It's still search for her shape, for her. I say her, including it, because I feel it alive.
Okay, okay. And there is another question I have. It's more about technique, writing techniques. There are, I think, two extremes of authors. One say in planning a novel, you plan the whole novel from the beginning to the end. And there's the other group of writers who say, I begin a novel, I have a group of figures that live in it, and they develop, and I leave them the freedom to develop. And then, as Aswani once said, I'm sometimes surprised to find out what the figures in my novels do without me telling before.
Yes.
So where would you place yourself between these two extremes?
Both of them, because every novel has its life. Sometimes I begin with a plane, with a plane.
Mm.
And every character, every sentence, every idea, I wrote it before I started. Sometimes it happened, but sometimes I only have the idea and began to create a character. And this character sit with me and discuss with me what happened tomorrow. And I believe that, like I said before, I am playing. I am playing with my characters, my ideas, my readers also. I am playing. And this is why sometimes I begin with something and end with another thing.
Okay.
It took another way.
Okay, thank you.
Wijdan?
Thank you so much, Mohammed, for this wonderful presentation and wonderful speaker. By the way, Hala El-Badry is one of our literary scene pillar, and we are proud of her presence and her strong voice, which usually supported men and women. So I don't think Hala El-Badry is just working in a woman's side. And my question to my dearest friend, Hala El-Badry, you mentioned that each novel took you years and years to be written. And my question is, this like the time that you took to write a novel, you said 5 years, 19 years, and so on. Do you think this is because of the self-censorship or because you try to mix between the reality and the imaginative world? And as the previous speaker and who asked the planning, it means the planning for your novel took you time, or you leave your protagonist and antagonist to flow with your narration. So this is my question, and thank you guys for this opportunity.
Thank you, Wigdan. I took time because every novel has a story. For Muntaha, my novel Muntaha took 14 years because I wrote the whole novel in 1 year, the first draft. And after I read it as a draft, I found that it expressed something I didn't believe in. And I realized that I don't know well the whole idea. I wrote about Egypt between the first World War and the crisis of March 1954. When I wrote the first draft, it was about a village in the 17th. But when I read it, I began to return back to history and try to understand Egypt, try to understand the Byzants, the Egyptian Byzants, and try to understand the people, the cultural, the history, the modern history. And this took 10 years to study. And after 10 years,
I think we lost her.
Yes, I think she's trying to move. I mean, obviously she has an internet issue. I think what she's trying to do is to move to the phone, so she'll be continuing on her phone. So we'll just give her a few seconds. She'll be back with us. But until she comes, I think Hala raised a very interesting issue when she talked about translation, and she thinks that one of the problems that are facing Arabic literature.
دخلت من التليفون.
طب
Okay, I'm
كويس،
sorry.
هايل.
Okay, through this period, I think it developed my tools. Then I realized that now I can understand the Egyptian village, the Egyptian people in villages. And I began to write. During this period, I collect awards which express the Byzants. I have my dictionary, and I use it when I began to writing the novel. This took 3 years. This is Muntaha. And for Rain on Baghdad, I want to write something on Baghdad, about Baghdad, because after the war of Kuwait and Iraq, then the war of the American, I feel that every news I heard about Iraq is about war. But Iraq is a civilization, a big civilization. And I need to express, I need to write something about this person, the Iraqi person, not the war. And I began to write. I wrote for a long time everything I know it about Iraq, but not a novel. Everything I know about the society, my friends, the evidence, the period I lived in Iraq, and so on. Then I began to write a novel. My preparing a novel, it took some time, not writing the novel, but preparing for writing a novel. This is why I took a lot of time. And what is this all? Because I think which then ask me something else.
May I add one thing, Mohammed?
Yes, please.
Thank you so much, Hala. It's very helpful. So my question also, it means this is a planning. You plan to write a novel. So that's why you have been going through collect the all information about your novel. This is exactly what Toni Morrison said when she wrote her novels. The same thing. It means collect the facts before entering the imaginative world of the novel. So my question is, the time that you usually took for writing, you said years. This is because of the self-censorship?
No, never, never.
Okay.
Never.
Okay.
I return back to my computer.
It's okay. The phone is fine. It's good.
Okay. Now I will leave the phone.
Oh, okay.
Because it's
Very
difficult.
Good.
No, for the censorship, I confess myself to write what I want to write first. Then we can think about it. I write what I want. Then when I rewrite, because I rewrite many times. I rewrite. Then maybe censorship jump.
Very good. Thank you. Hoda had raised her hand. Then I don't know if she's still around.
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, Hoda, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, Hala.
Hi, Hoda.
It's always a pleasure hearing your precise and clear way of saying your thoughts. And this brings me to my question about, it's always a wonder how you would separate your choice of topics to choose to write it in art, as a novel, as a short story, or as part of your journalism career. You are a journalist, a well-spoken journalist, and you know how to say things clear and precise, and the information and your point of view.
Yes.
So what is it that brings a topic into your mind so that you want to put it in an art form, not in the direct way, so that it is not, it's through a place, through an imaginary setting, through characters, and imaginary or semi-imaginary characters. Why, where is your cutoff? That this topic is a topic for journalism, this topic is, I would like to present it in terms of art. Also, Mohammed pointed out in the beginning about your style. How do you keep yourself, when you are writing a novel, how do you keep yourself from being more direct, the way you are used to being so in your journalism career? How do you let your characters do it in a subtle way, not in the very direct way, especially in novels that are so in an imaginary world like Modern Sur or Walled Cities? So it's a double question. What topics do you choose? And how do you make the clear-cut split between the styles?
The topic choose how they born, as an article or a novel or a short story, not mine. Sometimes I wrote a short story. Then after 10 years, I find that this short story is the introduction of a novel. And it's, for me, it's a surprise, because I feel it as a short story, but I wrote it 10 years ago. And one day when I read it, I find that this is not a short story. It is the beginning of a novel, and start to write a novel on this topic. And maybe I will not put this short story to the novel at the end of the novel. It's very complicated. It's very complicated.
So they
But-
choose
but,
themselves, yeah, Hala?
I told you it's a play. يعني, I like to play, and this is the first one. The second one is please.
How do you make the split in the style so that you there? For me, being a journalist is a very straightforward, direct way of putting your
Yes,
thoughts.
it's dangerous. It's very dangerous. But because I took a lot of time to write and rewrite, and this when I write a literature, a short story or a novel, it's totally different. It's totally different. I use sometimes direct and specific and short sentences, but because this scene need this style. But in general, no, because every scene after I write it, I return to write it in another way. Sometimes I write many things and cut it from the novel and never appear in the novel. And this is, I think I can control it. I can control
Yeah, this is a conscious effort that you make. So a person who is a journalist would have to be conscious of not passing that into the writing.
The writer of literature writer also have the same, because we adore our writing, not love, adore our writing, and it's very, very difficult to cut something you spend a lot of time to write it, but you have to cut. Cutting is like a thermometer. Cutting is like مش عارفة أقول إيه.
Surgical writing, surgical.
Yes, yes. Sometimes I call Hala El-Badry is a butcher. When I finish my novel, sorry, when I finish it, I began to cut with closing eyes. I close my eyes and began to cut. Then I put all this on my desk and began to read the novel again and try to make it light, more light.
Okay, thank you.
I hope I could I can answer
That,
you.
well, you answered me by showing how much you loved the way you're working on these things, and that is probably the passion is what makes the split more than the conscious effort.
Yes.
Great. Nahla?
Okay, thank you, Muhammad. Hello to everyone. I was actually going to ask a question that's very close to what Hoda just asked you. So maybe I'll just mention it with a slight twist. What you mentioned about journalism and literature writing reminded me of an interview I heard of Isabel Allende. She said when she met Pablo Neruda, he refused her interviewing him because he said she was the worst journalist because she was never objective. She lied a lot, and when she didn't know something, she made it up. So he advised her to become a fiction writer instead of a journalist. So I've always, since that time, I've always thought of the two writings are very different. Or, you know, if one person is doing both of them, I wasn't sure how they'll split between them, or like, you know, have a totally different style for each one of them. So I was wondering, is your journalist writing sometimes affected by your fiction writing? Do you still like use imagination and, you
Yeah,
know, it's
yeah.
more literally
Yes,
than,
yes.
than
Yes, yes. Some of my enters, my articles enters. There is an imagination, even in political writing.
Oh, that's interesting. That's really interesting.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so and another thing, allow me to slightly disagree with you, something you said earlier. You said you don't identify as a feminist, but actually I view you from what I've read, you know, from what you've written, that you're a feminist. So maybe it's a matter of a definition, like, because I know the word, especially here, maybe in our Arab world, is kind of loaded with a lot of baggage or with stereotypes that a lot of women don't want to be associated with. But like, I think it's more or less, it's a matter of definition. Maybe if we define it as just, you know, requiring equity between the two sexes, that would be an easier thing to agree on. And like,
Maybe.
okay, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other comments or
Yeah. May I?
Renee, please.
It's not a question, it's more a comment and a thank you for this lovely meeting. I enjoyed it very much. I love everything you write, Hala. And the issues which were discussed, I wanted to speak also about feminism, but the speaker before me said it already. And I liked very much the expression of the novel, or writing a novel in itself, is something changing and developing all the time, like life. And that's why the novel will never come to end as sometimes expected or said, because life is changing, as you said. I liked it very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Renee.
Yeah, Hartman, please.
Well, if no one else asks a question, I'll have another one. You characterized yourself as belonging to the generation of the 1970s.
Yes.
Now, we know in Egypt, it's a favorite pastime to divide literature according to decades.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, I mean, I sort of the generation of the 1960s is rather well known to me. I know many of them. And I would also know some characteristics of them, even common characteristics. Now, my question is, would you have a few common characteristics of this generations, or is it only a question of 10 years?
I think that only the 16th generation is the generation.
Okay.
Because they have many elements common with all of them, like the crisis of 67, and they try to change writing after this crisis, and they make many difference in their structure, in the structure of the novels. And also they wrote about their childhood. They have many things together, but not our in 17th generation or 18th or whatever. No.
So would you just consider it as a continuation of what Edward al-Kharad called the Hassasiyya Jadida?
Yes.
But then in the 90s, I would think that actually in the 90s, it was the decade of autobiographies.
Yes,
I think
in
it
the
was just
90s,
a very strong decade of writing autobiographies. And I've always been wondering why the 90s would have been so eager to write autobiographies compared to the other, to the
I know why.
previous decade.
I have an opinion in this. Because until before 90, from 60 to 90, it's the same generation from my opinion. But in 90 generation, the society made a deal with the youth to be a good boy and study well. And then after that, you will find a home and a job and a beautiful girl. There is a deal, some deals, and the society broke this deal. Then all those 90s generation try to refuse the big idea and try to يتحسن. يعني ايه يا محمد؟ يتحسن.
Protect, probably.
Protect yourself by I am فلان. I am. This is why they wrote an autobiography to defend themselves. I think that, and not only autobiography, but they broke the taboos.
Mm-hmm.
This is very important in reading their production.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
I think.
Ahmed? Is Ahmed still around?
And Hassan, Dr. Hassan.
Can
Dr.
I just
Hassan, did you raise your hand?
Briefly comment that it's a very profound analysis. Yeah, I like that analysis for the 90s writing style of autobiographical and breaking taboos. Thank you.
They are our sons and daughters. And this is why we can understand them. We saw them as يعني متمردين, rebelling,
rebels.
Yes. They refuse us. They refuse the big causes. They refuse everything because, and I think they had the right to do this. They had the right.
Thank you very much. I have Amira has raised her hand.
Yes, you hear me?
Sure, yeah. Go ahead, Amira.
Okay. I try to allow also my camera to join. Yes. I hope you can also see me.
Yes.
Sorry, I joined with my baby. I failed to bring him to bed before the meeting. First, I would like to express my pleasure that for this meeting, it's very interesting, and I would like to thank you first and thank Ustaza Hala El-Badry, and express also my love to her work. I started actually with Imra'atun Ma, certain woman. It was the first thing I have read from Hala El-Badry, and I agree that the first reading for this novel, you would feel like this is a feminist writer, and she is very much on the side of women. But later, and I liked to, because it was already a novel. I was comparing this with a German, actually an Austrian writer, Ingeborg Bachmann. That was my master thesis. So because I'm feminist, so I loved, if Hala El-Badry is also feminist, it's motivating. The work was, or the novel was motivating me for feminist feminist research. And in the field of feminism, you like always, and you look for feminist or novels or writings what support your ideas or your thesis. That's why everyone would feel that she is feminist. But later, I could figure out that Hala El-Badry is not on the side of, not only of women's side, but on the side of the people. She is interested to focus, or she in her work, she tries always to focus on the human being, man or woman. Simple people, for example, from the villages, or in her writing about her travel, for example, I could feel that she is expressing the feeling of other people. She is describing more people than, okay, places and culture, but also describing other people, their traditions, their habits, was taking a big place in her writing. So this is one point. But if I would like to ask something to Hala El-Badry, I would like to understand her activity as a journalist is somehow in contradiction with her activity as writer for big novels, because the journalist, the activity of a journalist, the skills, what the journalists mostly have is to be quick, to react fast, to write quickly, because tomorrow your article should appear in the magazine. And as a novelist, you write big project, you prepare for this for
a problem with the
Can you, Hala, can you start responding? I think she
yes,
made her question clear.
It's very simple. I told you that I am like a trapeze player, need a balance all the time. It's very difficult, of course, because I think literature writer need all the time and need to be alone for a long time. But as a journalist, as a journalist, I move to the villages inside Egypt and move to many countries outside Egypt, and this has given me the opportunity to new people, well, to open my mind, to know the difference between people in this side and people in that side. I think Amira returned back. Yeah.
I lost
okay, if you need to continue asking, okay. We lost her again. Okay, I think that is.
Has Amira disappeared again?
Yes, her voice disappeared.
Okay. Have you finished, Hala?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I lost connection for a while. I'm talking about that as a researcher, I can understand that you love your work. It's difficult to delete parts of it, and you would like, of course, to put. My voice is disappeared.
Amira, one of my protagonists in my novel, A Certain Woman. Amira herself evokes me to write this novel, because when she made her master about comparing between my novel A Certain Woman and Melina of Bachman, I never heard about Bachman as a novelist. I heard only about Bachman as a poetry. And I asked her, where is her work? She told me that there is no Arabic novels, and she has only one novel, Melina. But after maybe 10 years or 7 years, I found that Bachman have 3 novels, but not published in her life. Only one published in her life, and the two of the other 2 parts published after she died. And I asked her, why you consider me and Bachman as يعني مش عارفة شبه بعض يعني like each other.
Similarities.
Yeah, similarity. I never heard about her as a novelist, never. And she took 5 years to finish her master. And after she finished, I told her, maybe I'll go to German. And I thought that she is a German, but she is Austrian. And search on Bachman to know her. And after a years, I went to Berlin and look for books for Bachman, and I find only by German language, and I can't understand. I only took a magazine. Now I don't remember the magazine, but I took a magazine. Its cover, her on the cover of the magazine, her picture, and returned back. And after many years, I began to thought why I didn't begin to write a novel about searching about Bachman. What is the similarity between us? And began the novel with this idea. And then I invite her to my house and thought, why I invite only one person? I will invite somebody with her. Because I love Georgia O'Keeffe, and I love her life. I love her so much, her painters and so on. I began to invite O'Keeffe also. Then I thought, they are not from the Arab world. I will invite one of the Arab world. I began to search about a woman who has the same life, the same life. I found that قوت القلوب الدمردشية, the literature history in the Arab world ignore her and her works. And I know her by accident. After Said translate her novel Ramza Ibnat al-Harim from Germany, not from French, through French, through Germany, 3 languages. And I like the novel very much, and I ask all around me, you know قوت القلوب? Yes, we know قوت القلوب, because she gave award, the first award to Naguib Mahfouz in her salon. Only, this is the only information about Qut al-Qulub. Then I began to search about Qut al-Qulub. There is no information about Qut al-Qulub except one chapter in one book written by, I'm sorry, a journalist. I am sorry. And it's very, very, very simple. And he wrote about her because of Mahmoud Abu al-Fath, not because she is a big writer. And I began to search in French. In French, I found doctorat, PDH, and I found her books. I found news about her, but not enough. I began to search about her family. I visited her home and her family. They are not found. Only some who directed the place, because she is from Sufism family, and they all died, and only some relative. I found some relative to her, and they told me some information about her. And this is why, this is how the novel began to grow up and to create. After I invite the three of them, I began to think why I don't invite their characters, their protagonists in their novels. Then I invite Ash, it means myself, I, because Bachmann did not give her character a name. It's Ash in German. And I name it I, or Anna, myself. And I invited my protagonist, Nahid, from my novel, A Certain Woman. Then I invited Ramza from Qut al-Qulub, Ramza وعصر الحريم. Then I began to, we can talk together without men, of course. And then I began to invite Stiglitz, Alfred Stiglitz, the husband of O'Cave, and Max Frisch, and Paul Celan, the lovers of Bachmann. Then Mahmoud Abu al-Fath, the lover of Qut al-Qulub, and my husband, Ahmed al-Badry. Then we sat together and made the novel. This is the story.
Fantastic. We're almost out of time, but we still have one more person who wants to speak. Ahmed, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Hala. Let me start by thanking you so much for your time and contributions. It's significant for someone like me. I have a simple yet big question. Do you normally have a pattern that you follow at choosing the topics of your novels? And the second part of the question is, post-topic choosing, what's the process that you follow to build up the story? Do you normally choose the idea first, or the characters first? And what after you choose the characters? Do you build up their traits? I'm interested to know how you build up a story. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I didn't understand the part one of your question, but part two, I will answer you. Now, I told you how I built my story, my novel, with a certain woman. My novel, which I write now, it began with an idea, not a character, not an idea, only an idea, a fantastic idea. And I very, okay, حماس, excited about it. I excited about it and began to try to build a characters to play on this idea, a characters. I began with one, and I have to know everything about the character, which will produce my idea. It's like using elements to build a building. And I began with one character, and then I put it like فسيفساء, what's
mosaic,
like mosaic. I began to put one here and then one beside it, and then one beside it in a little stones. Then began the picture complete, and I can see it. Then I ask myself if this picture, this character, can produce the idea or not. Sometimes after I build a character, I find that I will end it and begin to rebuild it again. Then another character, and sometimes I begin with a paragraph of thoughts. I never knew where I will write tomorrow. Never, no. And then when I learn from Naguib Mahfouz, not only Naguib Mahfouz, I have to tell you something. I am a swimming champion. When I was 5 years old, I began to training as a swimmer. And in the pool, it's مساحة what
area.
It's an area, limited area. It's a limited area. It need my effort and the effort of my trainer, my captain, team, only to succeed, to succeed. This is teach me how to work. I need my effort. I need to work. Then I sat on my desk and began to write.
Thank you. This is a lovely image. I think since we're out of time, it's a very appropriate image with which to end this conversation. I thank you very much, Hala, and I thank you all participants. This has been a very enjoyable evening, and I hope you will stay connected with us in our future activities. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, all of you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Hala.
Enjoy the evening.